Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Kramer, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Program Manager at the University of Colorado Boulder's Leeds School of Business. These are certainly trying times, and here at CU Boulder, we have gathered our world-renowned faculty and alumni to provide frank and timely insights for life during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Today is the second of 7 webinars in this final spring COVID-19 related webinar series. To view upcoming webinars, please visit our website at colorado.edu/business/alumni. Click the drop-down arrow and click Attend Online Webinars. For today's webinar, we're excited to have Associate Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship and Research Director of the Deming Center, Dr. Jeffrey York, joined by Strategy, Entrepreneurship, and Operations Instructor and Faculty Director of the Deming Center, Brad Werner, here presenting Entrepreneurial Approaches to COVID-19, How to Plan, Pivot, and Persist. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have any questions now or during the presentation that you would like to ask Jeff and Brad, please send a question through the Q&A interface. We will monitor questions as they are submitted, and Jeff and Brad will respond to them at the end of the presentation. As a reminder, for optimum audio quality, we do have everyone on mute except for myself and our speakers. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please notify us through the chat interface and one of our support specialists will touch base. Lastly, a link to access the webinar recording will be sent to all registrants tomorrow, along with a survey link and supplemental resources from today's presentation. Now, I'm so excited to introduce today's speakers. Jeffrey York is an Associate Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship, Research Director for the Deming Center for Entrepreneurship, and Shane Faculty Scholar at the University of Colorado Boulder. He received his PhD from the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. Professor York's teaching and research are focused on environmental entrepreneurship and the simultaneous creation of ecological and economic goods. He is interested in how and why entrepreneurs create new products, services, and industries that reduce environmental degradation. He teaches classes in business planning, entrepreneurial thinking, and environmental ventures at the undergraduate, MBA, and PhD levels. Brad Werner is an instructor in the Strategy, Entrepreneurship, and Operations Division at the Leeds School of Business. He is a commodity futures trader and investor and also has an active career angel investing in the energy, technology, real estate, and hospitality sectors. Brad holds his MBA from the University of Chicago. He sits on the board of directors of several startup companies nationwide, and he actively consults seed stage startups. An experienced CEO, he has led a number of businesses throughout his career, steering a diverse basket of early growth ventures through initial risk stages. Welcome, Jeff and Brad, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand the webinar controls over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Brad and I are just thrilled to do this. We embarked on a journey right at the start of the pandemic to go out and try to understand what is an entrepreneurial approach to this horrible situation we found ourselves in. We've been friends for many years, and more recently, as Brad has become the teaching director at the Deming Center, and I've been the research director, we started to have conversations about academic research. And very quickly, Brad started to ask me, well, okay, how is that useful to me as an entrepreneur, an investor, or even a teacher? You know, what can I take from this research? What can I do with it? And we both enjoyed the conversation so much, we decided to start a podcast. It's called Creative Distillation, and on it, we seek to distill entrepreneurship research into actionable insights. We've got, I think, 6 episodes and the 7th coming up soon. And the last 3 episodes, we've really focused on learning about what are some of the things we can learn from entrepreneurship research and apply them to our current situation. And so today, we were going to do another level of distillation where we try to take everything we've learned and everything we both know through having been through many ups and downs in business and in markets and seen a fair bit in our careers to try to help entrepreneurs and those that are interested in helping entrepreneurs to think about the things they want to do. So first off, I just wanted to lay out an agenda for the day. Just want to talk a little about who Brad and I are. You kind of heard our bios from Amanda. Thank you. That was a very nice introduction. Then we're going to talk about what we've learned, and we're trying to distill it down to 3 basic principles of planning, Pivoting, perhaps, it should be pivot with a question mark, really, because we're not sure every business should pivot right now. And then persisting, what can we take from COVID-19? How do we move forward? So with that, I thought I'd let Brad do a little bit of introducing his background and how he came to be here today.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so I've moved to Boulder approximately 5 years ago from Chicago. Spent my life as a commodity trader. I'm actually still a trader. Boards of many businesses, started many myself, and been an entrepreneur before the term entrepreneur was common. But the bottom line of what we're here to do today, I think, is there any active academic research that actually will help the people in the trenches right now, the people that are suffering? How can we kind of show some tools or give you some tools, some strategies to actually, instead of having this, well, as bad as this is, use it as an opportunity to have your businesses grow stronger on the other end of this.
Yeah, and I think, my background, I worked in industry for, I guess, about 5 years after doing my MBA. Prior to that, I was a founder and co-manager of a whitewater rafting company, been involved in technology startups and consulting at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And I've been at Leeds for about 10 years now, doing research and teaching. And, it's one of the wonderful things about living here in Boulder is that we have awesome entrepreneurs like Brad that move here and want to get involved in giving back and teaching. And we've just been so fortunate to have him join us and be here. And so these are all the roles that Brad and I play. At the bottom, we got part-time podcaster. And I wanted to mention that because this is actually an episode of our podcast. So if you don't want to watch on YouTube, it'll be posted on our podcast page, which you can find by just typing Creative Distillation and Deming Center, and you'll find us there at the Deming Center for Entrepreneurship at Leeds. So,
yeah, and Jeff, the podcast is a blast. I'm assuming today we're gonna have a lot of fun as well. The audience needs to know, though, because it's called Distillation. Normally our podcast started some sort of brewery, distillery. Today, though, I can assure you that I'm coffee and water, at least to this point. How are you doing, Jeff? Are you coffee and water? Or?
No, I've got, I have my herbal tea. That's, I've tried to really mellow out during the pandemic. I actually picked coffee. I was just getting too amped up about everything, drinking coffee all day. But
right.
Yeah, usually we kick it off with a discussion of a local craft brewery or distillery and interviewing the founder. So, we're not trying to advertise our podcast, but please go check it out. Hopefully it's fun listening. And we think we try to really take it to a place where we get to some actionable insights, sometimes more than others. We'll try that again today.
Right. And so then, and we actually talked about today's format. Jeff kind of showed you the overview. What we will do is go and have a chat maybe for a half hour and kind of our thoughts here, and then open it up for questions and Absolutely. Actually hear from you and see if there's ways that we can help the individual participants on this call.
Yeah, and we are more than happy to try to help as best we can. One thing I will say, though, is we can't really provide consulting specific answers for your specific business today. But the wonderful thing is there's an organization going here at CU through the Deming Center called Co-Venture Forward. That's CO Venture Forward. And we'll have the URL at the end of this. If you do need help, I know I've consulted with numerous businesses. I know Brad has too. And we have a whole group of folks who have some experience there, more than willing to help, even if it's just talking to someone about getting another perspective. We're happy to do what we can there.
Yeah,
so
totally agree.
Today, I think I can sum up our message today in 3 words: plan, pivot, persist. Hence the title. But actually, we could probably do it in even just 1 word. It's take. Or no, that'd be 2 words. Yeah, already screwing that up. Take action. I think both Brad and I have been teaching entrepreneurship and been involved in it long enough to know that when you think about entrepreneurship and you think about it from an academic field, like we teach a lot of things in the business school. We teach marketing forecasting, financial forecasting, accounting, strategic planning. Those are all wonderful and immensely useful tools, but they don't tend to work as well under conditions of absolute uncertainty. And what I mean by uncertainty is it's not risk, it's where we just don't know what's going to happen. And to me, that is what entrepreneurship is. It is the science of action under uncertainty. And so by definition, you have to take action. And I know that's not easy in times like this. Believe me, we're all experiencing it, but you've got to act. And so what we're going to try to do is give you some direct, very, very quick takeaways of what you can do to get moving and get going on this. Not that we think
Yeah.
people aren't taking action.
And you know what? I echo that, Jeff, 100%. I mean, in a sense, it's a little bit of human nature to say, oh my God, the world is falling. Go and put your head under a pillow and it'll go away. This will not go away. And if you think it's going to go away, you're actually putting your family and your business in danger. So act. And the other thing, the acting right now, you are acting in a time of uncertainty. So there is risk in acting. So I just like to put that on the table, but there's a lot more risk in being inactive. So you do have to do something. You do have to, in a sense, start to plan and understand what this new reality may look like for you and your business.
That's right. And this comes from both the wealth of experience and the research. So that's where we're going to go today. So these are sort of the three stages we're thinking about as you move through this pandemic. We'll talk about each of these in more depth. I'm not going to belabor it here. We'll come back to this, but this is where we're going today. This is the path we're going down. So first off, when we first started talking about this, Brad mentioned the idea of financial triage. And I was like, wow, you know, I mean, I've been a wilderness first responder. I understand triage, but financial triage was sort of the first step. And I was going to let Brad talk a little bit.
Yeah, so financial triage is really important. In a sense, it's taking a picture of your current situation and dealing with it. And creditors are not going to go away. Period. They're not going to go away. And if you put your head under the pillow and you don't talk to them, it actually kind of encourages them to go after you. So the number one thing you need to do if you're in any sort of issues with any sort of creditor is call them and talk to them. Then I would suggest create an entire list of accounts payable. It could be 2 or 3 items. It could be hundreds of items, depending on the size of your business. And then create a hierarchy, right? So what is the most critical? What your goal is, how do we stay open one more day? Because you can't do anything if you're closed down. So you have to figure out who do we need to pay, or what kind of terms do we need to kind of agree upon to be able to be open the next day. And then stay on plan and maintain that communication with your creditors all the way through this. So in a week, now that you've kind of put them all at bay, do periodic check-ins with them so they know you're still not hiding them. You didn't put them off for one time, that you recognize that you have these obligations. But I would say in this time, it's really, really important to reach out and talk to all of those people and understand where they're going. And in a sense, what you're doing them a favor too, because they may have hundreds of people, hundreds of customers, just like you do. And getting kind of a feel of where their customers are at allows them to plan too, because otherwise you can have this just tremendous domino effect, which is not going to be good for anyone.
Yeah. So Brad, you would say that's the first thing. Get your house in order, know where your biggest liabilities are, and deal with them in a forthright manner, because you know, having worked in commercial banking, I know nobody wants anyone to not make payments, of course, but what they really don't want is for people to not make payments and then not know that you're going to make the payments.
That's right. And the other thing is that you may actually find terms that are still going to, this is the first start of bringing your business back to health, right? Because terms can be changed. Is it possible to rewrite leases, those types of things? So there probably are some opportunities in here. It's a really difficult conversations to have. Trust me, I've actually done this myself. It's really difficult, but I think that the overall benefit is far outweighs the act of inaction.
Absolutely. So then, so going from having your own house in order, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the research learnings we had. I guess it'd be 3 podcast episodes ago. We were interviewing Jenny Dinger and Michael Conger, who are both Leeds PhD alums, about a paper they did that's really interesting in understanding what happens in recovery of entrepreneurial communities in the wake of disaster. So, example, they were looking at the tornado in Joplin, Kansas, and things like this. And so, while it's important and critical, of course, to do the financial triage that Brad referred to, the other thing is not to become so inwardly focused that you're not part of the community you're embedded in. What Michael and Jenny find in their research is that when entrepreneurs reach out and work collaboratively with their community, they recover much faster. And there's this cyclical effect of folks understanding what resources are available, what kind of consulting is available, and even just the psychological benefit of talking to people that went through the same thing you did. But here's the critical tipping point they found in this research. you have to also start to make sure you're encouraging other new entrepreneurs. And that sounds really counterintuitive because you say, man, I've got my own house to keep in order. I've got my own problems. How can I possibly start to help someone else who's starting a business? The reason you want to do that is because in your geographic community where you're located, you need that influx of new businesses. And you'll also benefit from the perspective of someone who's just trying to start their initial foray during the pandemic. I mean, imagine how difficult that is. We saw this with all of our students having to rejigger and replan what they were doing. So those are just two insights from the research we found about staying in touch with the community, encouraging growth, not becoming, hey, we're the group that's been here before, nobody else is welcome. That actually doesn't lead to fast recovery. What leads to the community recovering is being open and encouraging to new startups as well.
Yeah, can I add just a couple of things to that? Because I think you're dead on. And so the way that I would distill it as an action item to people that are listening on this call is networking is important, right? You can't do this in a vacuum, right? So number one, stay engaged with your industry conversations, connections, right? Make sure, because my guess is that in your specific industry, you're going to have a lot of people actually dealing with the same problems, right? So continue your conversations with your customers 100% and your suppliers. Everybody needs to know what's going on. My guess is there actually may be some pieces of information and small tweaks you can do to your business to give you even a better competitive advantage than before the crisis hit us. It's also a chance to upgrade your team. Many companies right now, when you're in a almost zero unemployment environment, now that we have this big rash of unemployment, there are really going to be great opportunities to upgrade your team and redefine all of your stakeholders, not just who financially gains from you, but try to understand all of your stakeholders in your business universe. And then hopefully you can expand your advisors or your mentor team as well through this. And I think that all of those may actually give you a bit of breathing room. And once again, set the stage for this being an opportunity for you to grow your business when we come out of this on the other side.
Absolutely. And what you're saying is dead on supported by the research, Brad. What expert entrepreneurs do is they engage in a process that's called effectuation. And effectuation is differentiated from causation, not casual thinking, like that's what my undergrads talk about as, but causal logic of rather than trying to make sure you know what the goal is and gathering the means to go pursue that goal, starting with what you have and figuring out what new goals may emerge from that. So as conversations Brad was talking about that you have with your current stakeholders and even with potential stakeholders is what this model is all built around. Now, I showed this slide to Brad and he was like, what the heck is that, dude? We're not showing that to people, are we? It's way too complicated. This is the conversation we have every week on the podcast. But I'm going to simplify this. The effectual process is pretty simple. Start by reflecting on who am I? In other words, what do I care about? What the most important thing I want to do here? What do I know? What's my background? What do I know about? What's the industry I'm most familiar with? What are the things that I know about that I might not be working in my current business? And perhaps most importantly, whom do I know? And then from those three things, and this should be like a 10-minute exercise on a piece of paper, start thinking about what can I do right now? And then start simply talking to people. And the way this process works is your commitment now is sitting down with a piece of paper for 10 minutes and then calling up people and having conversations. We're not talking about making huge risky bets, expanding in new markets, nothing like that. In fact, you're just going to feel better from having conversations with people anyway. And what you're looking for is for individuals to make commitments to help you. And then guess what just happened? You expanded the means you have at hand because now they're committed to helping you. And so this opportunity allows you to actually grow your business, refocus it with a very low commitment. We're not looking to make big commitments here. We're looking to have conversations and to see what emerges from it. And the key to that process is if you sit and plan by yourself, you're not going to have the same ideas that you will have through these conversations.
Totally agree, Jeff. You can't do this in a vacuum, right?
Right, exactly. And so it's, again, just a little bit of reflection and then letting new business opportunities and goals and directions you might go emerge from those stakeholder commitments rather than sitting by yourself and trying to figure this out. And this research comes from interviewing expert entrepreneurs through what's called a think aloud protocol about how they think through situations. It's the way expert entrepreneurs think. It's different. Some of you out there probably are recognizing this, saying, yeah, I'm never quite sure what I'm trying to do, but I just know I'm going to do something, and I start talking to people and it happens. And that's a lot of this process here.
Right. And the other thing that I found actually through this, because everyone's doing business and actually meetings, Zoom, online, that people are more accessible, right? You have access to experts that'll answer the phone now that you may have taken years to actually get their attention. So right now is an opportunity in personal communication to be able to reach out to people. I think that there is this kind of, I don't know what I don't want to say we're all in this together, because I hear that every day on the news. But a sense is there is a sense of community among business people, business leaders, and industry leaders willing to help and expand their networks as well. Because I think a lot of people are doing this. I think that the information is more at your fingertips, I think, than the average individual realizes.
Yeah. And if you're interested in learning more about this, you can go to effectuation.org. Professor Sarah Sarasvathy, who created the theory, is there, and there's all sorts of tools and applications. This is a big part of my teaching. I'm trying to convince Brad it's a big part of his, even though he doesn't ever talk about it. I think it actually dovetails with a lot of his suggestions.
And I would tell you, and I would tell everyone that's listening today, that when Jeff first talked to me about effectuation, he could understand entrepreneurs. I actually called bullshit on that. I didn't believe it, but then he actually talked about the traits of entrepreneurs. And I think that if you look inwardly and you say, I have this sense or this feeling, and that's why I've done these things, that Jeff has actually, and his team has found a way to put this into paper and identify actually that it's not a feeling, that it's a systematized method of starting a business.
It's a way to go. It's a way to take action under uncertainty, and actually, it works really nice in existing businesses too. When it does not work, I can assure you, when you work at a financial services company and they tell you how to maximize penetration of a market, this is not the time for this logic. It will not go over well. When they tell you, hey, what's a market we've never been in that we might try? That's the time for this. Okay. So you got to know the different tools for different times. But I would argue that the current times are very effectual, or at least can be.
Yeah, okay. I'd agree.
So pivot. A lot of times, I know in my classes, and Brad actually facilitated a wonderful exercise I'll let him talk about in pivoting this last semester. But we have pivot question mark. I think I see for a lot of entrepreneurs I've been consulting with and students that are trying to start businesses, they've automatically tried to pivot their entire business to rotate around COVID. I think that's a mistake. I think this too shall pass. I know that's easy to say and hard to see, but it's the reality. And yes, of course, look at what opportunities you can do with your current means. But I don't think this is the time to abandon your entire business model and try to move into something else, because you're not going to be well positioned for the world that emerges when things start to open up a lot more.
Can I say one thing about that though, Jeff?
Of course.
My thinking is in COVID, the way that you act during this, and I'm talking about you as a business owner, acts during COVID is going to define your business for the next 10 years at least.
Yeah.
Meaning that if you are just all about the bottom line, you don't worry or care about your employees, that you blow off your stakeholders, and you're a bad actor, all based on money, that reputation is going to stay with you for a long time. And actually, I think it is could be an Achilles heel in your business and could sink you as well. I'm even noticing on our small neighborhood chats on local businesses that people think are making mistakes. I'm seeing groups of people boycotting businesses or planning on boycotting businesses when they reopen, just on the way that they've treated their employees through this difficult time.
Absolutely. So what should you do? We suggest using that logic of having lots of conversations with all of your stakeholders. Look for affordable tests. Don't make big commitments to things until they're proven out. How do you know it's proven out? Customers are paying. There is no other evidence. Fast results so you can know if it's working or not, and abandon the effort if it's not working. And most of all, build it out of what you have at hand. Now is not the time to necessarily go and try to acquire all sorts of new resources and things like that. Think about what you can do out of what you have at hand. How do you work with that to provide value for your current customers and potential stakeholders?
Yeah, and that's a really low risk kind of strategy too, which is great, right? Because you can start very small and test it. And so you're not risking your entire business. You're doing these small experiments, these small tests to see if they gain traction. And out of those, then you could actually really tap into some big growth.
And it might be something that grows well beyond the pandemic as well. You know, we never
Oh
know
yeah.
until we try these things. And so this is sort of the lean startup methodology, the fast, quick, in effectuation, we call it affordable loss. You know, but don't do anything until you've calculated how much are you willing to lose on it. And then you don't feel like you're taking risk anymore. You've already said, I'm willing to lose this much. If I do, I was willing for that. But don't do things that or you're over escalating your commitment. And how do you find those things? So we have this really interesting discussion with Trent Williams, who's a professor at Indiana University, and arguably the world's leading expert on entrepreneurship in the wake of disaster. He and his co-author Dean Shepard examined what happened in the trail of Australian bushfire devastation, as well as earthquakes in Haiti. And I think two things we wanted to talk about here. The first one was looking around and just seeing who can you help right now. Who needs help? Particularly your customers, of course, but also people that are not normally your customers. What can you do to help them? There's going to be two things that come out of this. Oh, and also thinking about what your needs are and what you wish somebody would offer. That's a really quick way to figure out how you can help people. Two things are going to happen out of that. One, you're going to get enormous psychological benefits. They found that folks that did this recovered much faster in the wake of disaster, psychologically felt better, felt like they were doing things. Second, you might, as we were just talking about, reveal new markets that you had no idea you ever even wanted to be in, or new products and services that you might want to offer. Even if that's not the case, you're still going to get the psychological benefit. And here's the other thing they talk about in the book. A centralized government response in these disasters was not the key to recovery. We need it. It's important. It's critical in the wake of disaster. It's not going to solve all our problems. It turns out that entrepreneurs, many of you listening on this call, people with small to medium enterprises or even large enterprises that understand how to get things done and help people, lead to the recovery much faster than a centralized effort. In fact, a centralized effort often interferes with the ability for those recoveries to happen, was one of the major learnings from this book.
Yeah, actually, Trent was amazing. And the parallels from what Trent described in Australia and what we're going through now is great. And bottom line is, Trent was another call to action. Number one, you have to do something. And it starts by doing something small, maybe with your neighbor, maybe with your close customers, something like that, something very small can grow into some very big, make some very big changes. And the really interesting part, I think, is if you look at some of these disasters that we've had over the years, the 89 crash and the bubble of approximately 2000 and the 2008 to 2010, there have been some really amazing businesses that have come out of the rubble of those economic disasters.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, if you're interested, that's, I think, what was it, 2 episodes? We're getting so darn good at podcasting, Brad. I can't.
Yeah, it's just flying by.
Yeah, no. Anyway, that's I think 2 episodes, a really great conversation with a very thoughtful guy. And what I love about the professors we've had on the show is, yeah, they're professors, they're researchers, they're world-class researchers, but they really love the opportunity to come talk to Brad and I about, what does my research actually mean for entrepreneurs? So that's been a lot of fun. And Trent, absolutely. There's a whole, my favorite part of this book, by the way, in the last, because every time I tell Brad about Visa Research, his response is,
oh God, not again. but you know what though? The point is, I'm actually learning though that when I first came to the university, I thought I saw all these researchers working on these problems that really didn't mean anything to people on the ground. And so my drive, my purpose is to help spread the message of cutting edge thinking to help people right now that are dealing with severe issues.
Absolutely. Well, it usually says, oh God, that's why I asked him to read it. But usually, so what? And the whole chapter, so yeah, I wrote this whole chapter in the back of the book for people like Brad. Anyway, great conversation. Check it out if you're interested. Great scholar. Really nice guy too. Okay. Last thing we wanted to talk about is Persist. So this is a screenshot from an article I wrote for The Conversation. The Conversation is an open source, basically column syndicate for academics. And here's the thing. COVID-19 offers us an opportunity to understand how entrepreneurship can address things well beyond creating profitable businesses. And what I mean by that, I think we could all come up with dozens of examples, everything from Colorado distilleries moving into making hand sanitizer to to me, entrepreneurship also extends out to the recent positive test we've had on vaccines. It's all entrepreneurial action. It's action under uncertainty. And the good news about COVID, I think, is that it is going to get solved. Now, there might be people out there that say, oh, it won't get solved. There'll be no vaccine. I don't know, man. I tend to think when you dedicate the entire world's resources to solving a problem, they get done pretty quickly. That's been my experience. I'm happy to discuss that Q&A. Climate change and other big scale grand challenges are not going to be as easy to solve. And the main message I want you to take from this is I study how entrepreneurs address climate change. And it turns out, if you look at the various interventions you can take to try to address it at a community level, you can put in place policies. You can try to get existing companies to do better things or less worse things. You can try to put consultants in place. If you look across the political spectrum, the only intervention that gets support from both people on the left and the right is entrepreneurship, starting of new businesses that address climate change. And I think the same thing is happening with COVID. Unfortunately, it's become this politically divisive thing. And there are very similar situations where we have something that is just a natural phenomenon. It is not, anything that anyone intends to happen or has control over, yet we try to put politics on science, and that just doesn't work very well. But what the research shows us is entrepreneurs get the benefit of both sides in climate change. If folks are on the right and they don't even believe it's a real problem for whatever ideological reason, they still support renewable energy businesses. If they're on the left where they think it's the most horrible thing and business is all to blame, they still support people that are trying to start for-profit businesses that address climate change. I would urge you to think about COVID in the same way. As an entrepreneur, you get the benefit of the doubt from people all over the political spectrum, but you yourself have to maintain that middle ground of, look, I'm a person that's trying to create value for my customers and make a good living. Nobody will doubt your ability to do that or question that. And I think entrepreneurs are actually going to be a big focus coming out of this in solutions for bigger problems.
Right. So my thinking of Persist, and I agree with what you said, is first of all, we're all in the position to change the world for the better. It takes many, many small steps to do that. So in a sense, to me, what do you want the world to look like when we come out of this, right? We normally, I don't think that it happens very often. Civilizations actually have a reset button to say, hey, we don't need to live by the old structure that we're in. What would you like something new to look like? So I think that that's a really good way to think about how your business may fit into that. The other thing is that I want to really let you know is Persist is really easy to say and very difficult to do. So don't think that Jeff and I are up here, kind of giving these high level things. This is really difficult, but you have to keep at it because the alternative is you're going to fail. So you have to keep at it. And then also keep your inner circle kind of informed of what you want to do. Once again, when we talked about the networking and all those other types of things, I think that actually allows kind of group grit, right? That together we can actually build something stronger, right? So in a sense, I think as you expand your network and you talk to people in your current network, by doing this, it gives you kind of that strength to persist. And it also gives your peers that strength to persist. So that connection is really, really important right now as well.
Absolutely. And we all need people to do this. Even if it's not just for you and your business, for your community, for everyone that relies on you, I mean, you got to push forward and keep going. And when you do, new opportunities are going to emerge.
Yep. I echo that sentiment 100%.
So quick review. What are you not going to do? That's the planning, the financial triage we talked about. Next, start with simply, who am I? And I think that relates definitely to Brad's last point. What do you want the world to look like? What do you care about? Who do you know? Whom do you know? Who can you talk to? What can you do? Rather than thinking about a pivot, maybe think about quick, low commitment tests that may encourage a pivot later on. If you have no idea where to pivot to or what you could try to do, think about who can you actually help right now? And then as far as persisting, yeah, you just got to keep going. And also think about what these learnings mean for the broader world, as well as your business coming out of this.
Right. I totally agree. And I'm thinking in that pivot stage, Jeff, one thing I'd like to say is Jeff and I have both gotten many, many questions about business models. This is a very high level, right? This is not specific to one business, what we're talking about. And the question that we've gotten though, is my business model sustainable? And the answer is maybe, right? It just depends on what business you're in. But I would say everyone needs to actually go back and look back at their business model, understand what their sustainable competitive advantage was before COVID, and what is it going to be after COVID. And I think this is a really great time right now to do a full audit of what that actually means for each specific business. And then you'll decide individually, based on that type of research and talking to your customers and your network, on whether a pivot, change in the business model is appropriate for your business today.
Right, right. And those low cost, affordable loss experiments, that's key. Don't bet the house on,
Right.
trying something new. Make quick experiments. Don't be afraid to say, well, that's not working, and just leave them behind.
Oh yeah. If it's not working, man, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this stereotype I know you encounter, Brad, of the hard-headed entrepreneur who keeps going against all the odds, the Mark Zuckerbergs who nobody would listen to. No, that's not what expert entrepreneurs do.
Right. I totally agree.
At least not for very long, because anyway. Okay, that's it from us. Thank you. If you're interested in Co-Venture Forward, we offer consulting. It's not just Brad and I, it's dozens of experts from around the CU community. The URL is right there, but if you just type in Co-Venture Forward, you'll find it. Creative Distillation, our podcast, you can find that just by typing Creative Distillation into Google. If that doesn't come up, then just type Deming Center Creative Distillation. It definitely will. Or you can find it through us. I'm Jeffrey.York at Colorado.edu. I tweeted at York Jeffrey, and then Brad's email's right there, Walter.Werner at Colorado.edu. He tweets at WBradleyWerner. And we would love to have your feedback on this, on the podcast, any questions you have about CU, entrepreneurship, whatever we can do to help. So with that, let's roll over into the Q&A. Unless you have anything else you wanted to say, Brad.
No, I think that was a great wrap up. And I'm hoping that Amanda has some questions for us. We can help some people directly on this call.
I'm hoping people are still out there.
Great. There are definitely still attendees on the webinar. So please, as a reminder, feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A feature, and we will ask Jeff and Brad. Let's start with a question here from David. Due to COVID-19, besides video chat forums, what ancillary or new services are businesses considering adding to their platforms?
You want to take that first, Brad?
Sure. Well, yeah. So can you repeat the question one more time, please, Amanda? I want to make sure that I get this right.
So besides video chat forums, what ancillary or new services are businesses considering adding to their platforms?
Okay, so the bottom line is it's all about connecting with your customers. So I would say that there are things that I don't even know of that people are using to touch, but first of all, I would say last week was the first time that I went to curbside delivery. It was so impressive to me that I pulled up to this place, item was in my car within 30 seconds, and I was gone. And in the old days, I would have walked into the store, looked through the aisles a little bit, taken a 10-minute transaction, and so the whole process takes a half hour. So it's very, very hard to answer this question directly unless I know the specific business. But the bottom line is talk or understand what's going on within your competitors. Talk to your customers and ask your customers how they expect to have your product or service delivered to them. And I think by understanding what your customers needs, that will take you to the answer of your question. Are video chat forums appropriate for them? I have no idea, but I think that my thinking is the collective intelligence of all of your customers is much greater than the intelligence of Jeff and I on this call. So the more you talk to your customers, I think that they'll lead you the way and how to deliver correctly.
That's absolutely right. And especially when you talk to them and they agree to pay for something, that's the place to dig in and go forward, because then you really, folks, all the research shows that people will tell you all sorts of things they'll pay for and buy and would love to do and things like that. But yeah, that doesn't tend to work out. It's when people are willing to pay. That's right. But yeah, I totally echo Brad. I think customer expectations are going to change after this.
Oh yeah.
Where there's some people that like to go to the grocery store, but there's going to be a lot less of them after this. So I think thinking about those delivery services, those curbside services, outdoor dining, people's norms are going to change.
Yep, I agree. And the other thing is we're never going to go back to normal or whatever you think that normal was until people feel safe. And so it's all about safe. And so how can you allow people to feel safe in doing a transaction with your business?
Yeah, I mean, I saw, you know, I mean, if you know anything about viruses, you know, you cannot actually contract a virus from drinking alcohol. It's literally impossible. But I've seen a local brewery that posted something about all of their safety and cleaning and everything else. And, you know, I was like, that worked for me, even though I know it really makes no difference whatsoever. It was still,
so are you telling me that that's why I don't have the virus yet, is because my bourbon habit?
As long as we keep recording Creative Distillation, Brad, we'll be fine. We don't have to take
perfect.
drugs. Just good old whiskey and beer will keep us going. So.
Okay, well, I hope that answered your question. Amanda, do you have another one?
Yes, absolutely. We have quite a few questions. Next is from Seth. If you are currently fundraising for a startup, how do you show potential investors your ability to pivot, even if there might not be a reason to pivot yet?
I can start with that one, but I'm really
Sure.
what Brad says. So I think actually, from what I've seen in talking to investors, I think by not pivoting quite so hard, I think a lot of times investors are pretty turned off by pitches. They're like, and we're all about COVID-19, because investors take a much more long-term horizon than, you know, the next 12 months. I mean, most people are not making an investment expecting to get out of it in 12 months, especially in the startup phase. So I think talking about it, saying, you know, this is how we're moving forward, how we continue to move our business forward, but focusing on the fundamentals. What is your business model? What is the opportunity you're going after? I think that's the key.
Right. And so the person that asked this question, I've been on both sides of that transaction. I've actually funded many companies, and I've actually been involved in fundraising. It's very difficult right now. However, if you show a really strong value proposition and you actually show that there's a path for you to grow and succeed, investment money's there for you even today. You just have to understand, and you can't just whitewash this new reality. You have to address it. I'm not saying you have to pivot to it or anything, but if it's the elephant in the room or to your growth, you do have to address it. And if you address it honestly, I would say, and you have a very, very strong business idea that's been vetted, all, you know, operations, everything else that you want to do, I still think that fundraising, you'll get the money you need. Once again, the money is on the sidelines looking for good places. But I will say that the marginal companies that were fundraising before are going to have much more difficult time.
Yeah, not so many blockchain companies, right?
No, not for this moment.
I guess that was last year. Yeah, and I think the other thing I would say, just to try to specifically answer your question, I think thinking through the questions you really don't want the investors to ask, and then having backup slides prepared on how you would address that situation shows your ability to at least think about the hard questions. And so that I've always seen that be pretty successful in pitches, where it's like, you know, somebody asks this like killer question, like, oh, I was hoping someone asked that because we've thought through it and this is our thoughts. I mean, I think just showing you have the foresight to think about it is really helpful.
Right. And so when you're pitching and fundraising, you have to identify the elephant in the room, and it takes it off the plate of the question and answer. And I think it actually builds credibility for you. So it's really a good play.
I agree.
Great. Next, we have a question from Galen. Wondering, can you share more about your philosophy around the short-term need to generate revenue without compromising the company's original revenue model?
You want to go first, Brad?
Sure. Well, first of all, I actually know a Galen, so I don't know if this is the same person. If it is, I'd like to say hello. But a couple things about that. You need to revisit your revenue model and make sure it's appropriate for moving forward. Okay, so if it's based on assumptions that don't work throughout this this kind of normal that we're living in here for a moment, you're not going to go anywhere. So you need to first of all adjust to this reality, and like I said, without a specific example, I can't tell you if adjusting your business model is right or wrong. I would say though, don't hold on to it with both hands if people around you, your customers, are telling you that it doesn't work. And once again, it's going back to your customers. I hate to repeat this, but it's all about your customers, right? So you have to go back to your customers. understand their needs, and hopefully that original model that you built was solving problems for them, right? In a sense, everyone in business now needs to be solving problems for their customers. And if you're known as this problem solver, you will then continue into business in a really fine way. I think you have a great outlook in front of you. However, if you're not solving problems for your customers, whether it was working 3 months ago or not, it's not going to work moving forward. So it's once again, just you need to talk to your customers, and they'll tell you if the business model is right.
Yeah, I wholeheartly agree. I mean, I think having that conversation is really important, not just assuming you know what your customers need, but rather having the conversation is what we're offering. I've noticed your orders down, what can it do? What other problems are you experiencing? Where can we help you? I mean, nobody ever got upset when somebody asked how they could help them. So
that's right. And so it's like dealing with them. You have to be empathetic towards your customers in a sense that, and once that comes across, and if that's actually kind of like the soul of your business, that your business becomes known for something like that, that's really going to help you.
Yeah, well beyond whatever product you have, it's the ability to understand your customers and help them.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Great. Thank you both for that.
Sure.
Next, we have a question from Karen. Do you have any recommendations of indicators or information to keep an eye on to get early warning signs about changing business conditions?
Brad, you're way more dialed into that than I am.
Well, so I used to, until this happened, kind of the overall health of the stock market was kind of my number one indicator. I look at the stock market now, and it seems to me disjointed from reality. So I guess in a sense, my old way of doing things may not be appropriate now. I would say though, what I would do for me and what I'm looking for is the vaccine race, pardon me. When there's a vaccine and people feel healthy or feel safe, then I think you're good to go. So for me, judging the health of the economy is actually now based in science, and how are we on this path to, are there viable treatments or is there a viable vaccine? And so that's actually what I'm keying off of in understanding when the recovery is going to come and when we're going to get out of this.
And just in my own realm, I think oil prices and solar prices and things like that. I mean, energy is a huge part of our economy, and understanding the trends there are huge indicators. A lot of people are talking about not peak oil anymore, but peak oil demand. What do you do when you have trillions in assets stranded in the ground because solar's price plummets below oil and natural gas? Won't go too deep into that, but I watch energy markets very carefully because I think they're a bellwether. Also, auto sales are another bellwether that you can kind of tell different classes of autos. Those are some of the things I pay attention to.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks,
We
Karen.
have a question from an anonymous attendee. It's been asked a couple of times. If you have an idea, how do you find partners that will not take your idea and run and do it without you?
So
go ahead, Jeff.
Let me go on this one first, and I hope I'm not going to offend anonymous or anyone else that's asking this, but I asked this of one of my professors, and she said, what that you had an idea that was good enough for someone to want to steal? So that kind of gave me a little bit of humility. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs worry about this. It's a very rare occurrence. And here's the one thing I'll say is if you don't talk to people about your idea, nothing will happen. You don't really have a choice. If you have an actual patentable process, sure, you can file a provisional patent and do those things, but you have to talk to other people. And the only other thing I'll say is another, I thought was, we're all just extras in the movie of someone else's life. People are not waiting for you to come tell them about an idea and steal it. There are some evil people out there in the world, bad actors, but most of us, especially now, are just trying to get through day to day. They're not looking to lift your idea. More than likely, they won't even buy it or believe it's interesting. That's the problem entrepreneurs face much more often.
And so my advice to Anonymous is actually I'm a co-founder of a company that has almost 50 granted patents. And this was something that we struggled with. But I do think that there are ways to articulate your idea without spilling the secret sauce. So if you really do have something novel there, you don't have to tell people what makes it work. You just have to show how you're solving your customers' problems. Because most people don't give a shit about what's in the guts, right? They don't. How do you help me? Right? Can you make my product better? Whatever your add-on is. So I would say, figure out a way to articulate your messaging without giving your secret sauce away. and look for a great patent attorney. If you'd like a really good patent attorney, I have one for you. If you'd want to email Amber afterwards, I can help you with that, and get your ideas protected. The other thing is, though, be very careful about patent protection too. It is not the silver bullet that you may think it is, because when you start to patent an idea, it becomes public information. So now you've wanted to keep it close to the vest, and it's out for the world to see. So be very careful about that. But so bottom line is, let your customers know or your investors know the problem you're solving without actually telling them what's in the guts of your solution.
Yeah, and if they're trying to dig into the guts and not interested in the other part, that's probably not someone you want to be partnering with anyway.
Yeah, right. Use common sense.
Great, thank you. This next question is directed at Jeff. It is from Luther. He said, given your study around climate change, how can entrepreneurial approaches prepare market actors for response to coronavirus and the climate crisis at the same time?
Yeah, so a huge part of that is resiliency of systems. The climate crisis is going to lead to similar breakdowns that we have seen during the pandemic. Supply chains, problems of flooding, dislocation of populations. Not to be too much of a bummer, but these are things that are going to happen. And so I think building in resiliency and processes and systems, a lot of that will mean energy independence, local energy grids, redundancy and backup for battery storage. Those things are actually going to let us adopt renewables on a far larger scale as well. Also reducing the load demand of buildings, and as well as building in local agriculture so that local communities can actually subsist on agriculture. And that's tough to do in Colorado unless you really like beets, but there's paths to doing it. And I think the overall message is entrepreneurs are the people that bring ideas and potential solutions into action. And so I think a lot of what we're learning during COVID-19 is indeed, to steal my own headline from that column I wrote, a dress rehearsal for what's going to happen with climate change. I think businesses that are able to deal with COVID-19 and able to persevere are going to be very well positioned to think about the coming challenges of the climate crisis.
Right, and I'm just going to add, and I know this wasn't addressed to me, but in a sense, it's recognizing your stakeholders once again and doing good by them. And I think that that's really going to help you in whatever business you're in.
And also, the one other thing I'll say is there's something counterintuitive that comes out of our research I talk about in that column. It's that environmental entrepreneurs, people addressing climate change, are not necessarily best off going into a highly environmentally sensitive geography, because those places tend not to be particularly pro-business. They're actually better off in places, well, basically college towns that have a strong economic system, not to tout our own home, but like Boulder, where people care about the environment, but they also care about economic prosperity and building businesses and entrepreneurship. Those are the best places to build your environmentally relevant business. I'm happy to provide references for that if people are interested. It's a little counterintuitive, but that's where the biggest competitive advantage lies.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
Thank you both.
maybe a little fun based on that, right?
We're going to move into our final 2 to 3 questions here. Our next question is from Megan. Do you see any specific industries emerging or gaining significant strength in the near term?
Brad?
Well, I would say healthcare is a no-brainer on that one. I think that our healthcare infrastructure, as we've seen, is probably not up to what people's expectations were. So I would say healthcare is a good play. I also think sustainables, like Jeff was talking about before, but yeah, I guess that general industry is very, very hard. So we could pick a couple general industries, right? You know that Walmart and Amazon and the big online retailers, their industries have been booming. I think it would be sad to end up with only 3 or 4 retailers, those two, and a Target and maybe Lowe's and Home Depot is the only place to shop. But there is strength in actually doing business on the web right now. So the focus is, and if you look at the S&P and the makeup of the tech companies that are taking it up to where it is all the high-tech area. So it's high-tech, healthcare, I would say would be the big 2.
Yeah, and I would say also, healthcare, but specifically focus on retirement. I think the way people are going to think about healthcare for the elderly is going to change massively in this way. I mean, honestly, who among us would want to put our parent or loved one in a care facility after this?
It's terrible.
There's going to be massive change to that industry. The other thing is, I think platforms that allow patronage of local businesses, but in a high-tech way, are going to be amazingly important. Similar, like Patreon has seen a massive uptick. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform, but it's a way to pay local creators and content creators. They've skyrocketed during the pandemic.
Thank you. Great. And then we will move into a question from Neil here. He said, I'm in a position to offer value to society with a new business that I'm launching. Generally, what are the best ways to market and create awareness during these interesting times?
Oh boy,
That's
a tough question.
That is a tough one without knowing the business. I honestly believe it is through network effects and starting with who you know and the businesses you know and partnerships you can create. That's a very general answer, but it's a pretty general question. It's tough to be too much more.
And I would say that, did you say Arthur asked this? That
Neil.
His customers will be his best salespeople, right?
That's
So if he's delivering value to his customers, that's where he'll get traction.
Figuring out who those initial customers are and how you're going to create absolute delight for them, I think is critical. Focusing on the customers you have, and then growing from there.
Yep, totally agree.
Great piece of advice there. Well, in our final question, and you've touched on this a little bit, but I think it's a great place to end. Danielle asks, how important is it to use this pandemic experience to create a business that can survive an unforeseen event?
Jeff, you want to jump?
Sure. I mean, that's tough because, as I talked about earlier, we're talking about uncertainty, and by definition, that's not predictable. So designing for that is not really possible. What is possible is to embrace an entrepreneurial way of thinking that is focused in the means we have and creating new unforeseen value out of that, and making low risk bets in order to keep your business moving forward. So I think it's more about the sustainability of you as an entrepreneur than it is about the sustainability of your business in unforeseen events.
And so my answer to Danielle would be, you're add value to your customers. And the only way, unforeseen events are by definition unforeseen, right? So you don't know what's coming. So maybe best practices are, though, keep more money in the bank, right? If you had a month's payroll, keep 6 months payroll, plan for the worst and hope for the best. So there are some internal things you can do to protect yourself against cash crunches and really good relationship with suppliers and those types of things. I think networking within your industry, all those go into making a really solid business. But I do think that maybe this cash portion of having a greater cash on hand than you're used to will also provide some protection. But bottom line is, there's no way to protect from everything, right? There is inherent risk in life and in business, and you protect yourself the best you can, but there'll be some things that none of us will be able to plan for.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much to everyone for joining us for today's presentation, and a special thank you again to Jeff and Brad for this great information. As a reminder, all webinar attendees will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of this presentation. To view upcoming webinars as well as previous recordings, please visit our website at colorado.edu/business/alumni. We hope that you will join us for our next webinar, which is this Thursday, as CU Boulder alumnus and president and CEO of the Miami Dolphins, Tom Garfinkel, discusses the impact of COVID-19 on professional sports. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day and go Buffs.